Hi, students and advisors. My name is Danielle Reeds, and I'm an English instructor on the Southlake campus. I frequently teach ENC 2300 composition argumentation, and I wanted to make this brief video to give you a little bit more information about the course because or maybe to sell it a little also, because sometimes I think that students think that the only available option for them after ENC 1101, if they do have to take a second English, is ENC 1102, which makes sense because of the numbering. However, they do have a couple other options should they choose to or prefer them over ENC 1102. So if you're required to take a second English class and you're someone who enjoys debate or learning about current events, you're someone who thinks that they might go into some kind of sales job in the future, or you enjoy reading nonfiction text more than fiction text, then ENC 2300 might be the class for you. ENC 1102, while near and dear to my heart and wonderful, focuses more on reading fiction. You read a lot of poetry, short stories, and drama, research and write about those texts. ENC 2210 is more business centered. It focuses on technical communication, emails, memos, business communication, how to write it and correspond in that environment. So those are the kinds of things that those classes center on, where ENC 2300 is really more about argument, it's about persuasion, it's about analyzing others' arguments and using evidence to either further your own argument or how to assess evidence in someone else's argument. So why should you take this course? Well, if you're interested in learning the art of persuasion, then this might be a course for you. To learn how to appeal to specific audiences more effectively, to figure out what you believe, to find and use credible sources, to spot fallacies, to learn respect, civility, and humility. And I know that sounds like an ambitious list, but I do believe we at least discuss and interact with all of this within the course. So that's what our goal is as we're going throughout it. The art of persuasion is really about looking back at people who have made great gains through their ability to persuade others. Whether this has been through a Super Bowl commercial or a great political speech or a letter they have written, it doesn't really matter the text or the vehicle they have used. What we do is we study how they have used it. How have people been successful at moving large groups of people throughout time? So we might look at something like, Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail, or even Michelle Obama's DNC address, or Emma Watson's speech before the UN. These are all great examples of people who have stood up to try to persuade others of their specific beliefs and have been very effective. We'll also really focus a lot on audience. Audience is always important in a writing class because the more you know about the audience you're writing toward, the more effective you can be at targeting their concerns, their values, their beliefs. You know what they don't know, you know what they need to know. And never is that more important than in an argument class because you're really sometimes trying to negotiate nuance and you're trying to further your cause. And so the more you can learn about your audience and the more you can establish an authentic relationship with them, the better, which is often hard to do when you don't know your audience or you're trying to establish that relationship via a 4-page paper or a 30-second video or a short speech, something like that. And I did like this comic because it illustrates to me one of the most important ways to establish that relationship with your audience is by knowing someone's name. And he says, "You're a pretty good sales rep, except for the 9 times you called me Wallet instead of Walter." So having that kind of relationship where our audience trusts us and believes us, that is one of the hallmarks of persuasion. We call it ethos, and it's one of the aspects that can make you very credible and persuasive. I also love the aspect of this course that it helps you to figure out what you believe. And this is somewhat narcissistic and self-centered, but I really do think the course allows you to figure out by reading what others have said and what others argue and how they argue it, who you side with, who you disagree with, and where you stand in the conversation. So, if you enjoy those BuzzFeed quizzes that tell you what Friends character are you, or, if you were a dessert, what dessert would you be? This is the academic equivalent of that to me, which is definitely more complex than the BuzzFeed quizzes and it takes longer. But through the process of research and writing, you find out what you believe. And you may already think you know, and maybe you do know when it comes to your topic that you're writing and researching about. But I think that every student tends to learn a lot more about themselves and about others when they start down the path of research and writing and arguing. Also, a very valuable aspect of this course, especially in 2017, is the idea of how do you find credible sources? We're surrounded by so much information. There's never been more information at our fingertips, which is great. I can ask Siri for anything and she will tell me. But how do I know if that information is correct? And when you're making really important decisions about, where to live or who to vote for or who to marry even, you might want to be able to research and find out more about your beliefs, their beliefs, to find credible sources, to avoid fake news. And most of us don't have 10 hours every day to research and determine if the news that we're consuming is correct or is believable. And so we need to find those characteristics that will help us make those decisions. Do we listen to CNN or do we listen to Fox News? Do we go to NPR or do we, go to BuzzFeed? Another thing that hopefully this course will help you do is to be able to spot logical fallacies, which is similar to the idea of finding credible sources, but it's really the idea of when people argue, again, whether they're trying to sell you a car or trying to get you to vote for them to be president, or if they're trying to get you to buy a house, whatever it is, you want to be able to assess whether the evidence they're giving you, whether the reasons are sound, are logical, or are they based in emotion? Are they manipulating you? And this doesn't mean that everyone who is trying to sell you something or get something from you is going to be unethical or illogical in how they go about doing it. But it is good to be well armed. It is good to be able to assess, am I myself making a logical argument? Are they making a logical argument, or do I need more evidence than they're giving me? So I did like this meme because it says someone uses one personal story to discredit broad expert conducted experiments and studies. We talk about in class how not all evidence is created equal. And it really depends on the circumstance, it depends on the source, and how you probably want varied kinds of evidence, whether or not you're arguing or assessing someone's argument. Finally, and certainly not last important or least important, is the idea that hopefully in this class we talk about how to argue respectfully, civilly, and with humility, which is not something we see a lot these days, at least not in popular culture. So we have a lot of political leaders and even leaders in other realms who don't always act as the best role models for us when it comes to treating each other with dignity. But in an academic argument setting, that is one of the things that is stressed, is that you can disagree with someone, you can have different values and beliefs from them, and you can still argue respectfully. It doesn't have to be a war. It doesn't have to be an I win, you lose situation. And that the goal of argument from an academic standpoint is progress, not victory. And so we talk about how that is a cultural shift from most of the lifestyle that most of us lead, where we're in this culture of, sound bites and winning is everything. So I hope this information helped you to make a better assessment of the course and whether or not ENC 2300 is for you. And advisors, I hoped it helps you to decide, whether or not to recommend this course to students or to how to give them more information about what might happen in this course. Thank you.